Hi there, it's me again, Jack Wallen, and I am here for another Linux 101. Welcome all of you wonderful people who happen to be either curious or huge fans of the Linux operating system. Welcome. So today I want to talk about a rolling release. What it is, why you should use it, and what rolling releases are available. Some of them, the best ones, in my opinion. Remember, this is all my opinion, okay? Now, it's an informed opinion. Informed, I've been around for a while, so longer than probably a lot of you. Because I'm old. Okay. I'm not going to get into any really deep dives of what a rolling release is, because I want to make this accessible for everyone. I don't want you to have to be a Linux kernel developer to understand what I'm talking about. So for those of you who have a great deal of Linux experience, you might think, why isn't he talking a bit about the nuts and bolts of this? Because, you know, the average user doesn't really care about what happens underneath the hood. They just want everything to work. Okay, so you've probably experienced operating systems or even applications, just applications in general, that they'll make a release. Let's say it's 1.0. It's the first release, first official stable release of whatever it is. So you use it, and then out of nowhere they say, hey, version 2.0 is ready. Install it. Enjoy. Next thing you know, you get a notification that, hey, version 2.5 is available. Install it. And then version 3, version 4, etc., etc. Now, with an application, that's usually fairly straightforward. You download, if you're on Linux, you use your package manager and it'll upgrade the software. Or you might have to download the newer version and install it that way. Depends on what it is. With an operating system, it's a little different. Now, let's say you're using Ubuntu and you're on 24.04, which is the latest long-term release. Long-term stable, what the hell, LTS? Why can't I the long-term stable release? I don't know why I'm drawing a blank here. I use this stuff all the time. Anyway, let's say you're using 24.04 of Ubuntu, and you get the notification that 24.04.2 is now available. Well, you can use your package manager. You can do probably do release upgrade, I think is what it is, and it'll upgrade and you're fine for the most part. Well, not for the most part. I've never actually had an Ubuntu upgrade go astray. But then let's say the next LTS version is released, 26.04. You could do another do release upgrade, and most likely it'll be great. Or you can do a fresh install. A lot of people say you should do a fresh install. I have had instances where a distribution that I'm upgrading from one major release to another did kind of go astray. That was a long time ago. I have not had a version of Ubuntu go from a major release to a major release and something go awry. But it does happen, which is one of the reasons why some people will install their operating system with their home directory on a different partition than the operating system, so that should something go awry, they still have everything in home safe. So that's kind of the way it goes with traditional operating systems. What about rolling releases? Now, rolling releases tend to get a bad rap, mostly because people say that rolling releases always use bleeding edge software, so you might not get stable software, so the operating system itself could become unstable. I don't believe that is true. Mostly because we're talking about Linux here, okay? So it's pretty stable. But ultimately, the goal of a rolling release distribution is to reduce the need, or completely strike away the need, to reinstall or upgrade, manually upgrade to the latest version, right? So instead, what happens is that the rolling release is constantly being updated, right? So let's say that you have distribution X with packages 1 through 300 on the machine. There's a lot more than that, but let's say that's what you have. Okay, so you install version 1 of this rolling release with packages 1 through 300. Well, the next time things are upgraded, either applications or operating system, it reaches your machine. And then when you run the upgrade, or if you have it set to automatically happen, it's just automatically upgraded. So you've probably gone from version 1.0 to 1.5, and the applications 1 through 300 are now at their most recent stable release. And that is the key. On rolling releases, the software that you have installed should theoretically always be the most recent stable version. And stable is key, because there aren't a lot of rolling releases. There are some, but there aren't a lot of rolling releases that deal with unstable software. It is mostly stable releases. So you're not going to get alpha software on a rolling release, or you shouldn't. But what this essentially does is ensures that you always have the latest software and the latest operating system. So when version 2.0 of that operating system comes out, you don't have to reinstall it, because by nature of the rolling release, it's automatically upgraded along the way to that version. So effectively, you can install that rolling release one time, and it will always be updated, and you never have to reinstall it. You could effectively, if you use it carefully and wisely, you could install version 1 of that OS and use that distribution, that same installation, for the rest of your life, or as long as the distribution is available, because it's automatically going to be upgraded, and you don't have to do it manually. So that means you don't ever have to reinstall the OS unless something goes terribly awry, which probably won't happen. And so not only do you have the latest version, but that latest version comes with the latest security patches, along with the new features and all of that. So essentially, you always have the newest version on your machine. And considering that it's all stable, unless the operating system actually states that this is unstable software, you're going to have a fairly reliable machine. Now, here's the cool thing that I think about rolling releases. And I think that this is one of the best aspects of these rolling releases. Let's say that you use distribution X, and it's not a rolling release, and you installed version 1 of the operating system. Well, when version 2 finally comes out, imagine that you have, let's just say, for example, that there are, with the operating system, all of the command line tools, all of the user-facing software, all of the services, everything. There's maybe 2,000 pieces of software installed on distribution X, of which you are using version 1. Now, when version 2 comes out, so the operating system is been upgraded, and you have 2,000 applications that have to be upgraded, right? So you're using Ubuntu maybe, and you do release upgrade, and it goes through the whole upgrade process, and you've got to, all of those pieces of software have to be upgraded, and all of their dependencies have to be upgraded. The likelihood of there being problems of going from version 1 to 2 is greater than if you're using a rolling release, where all of those upgrades happen incrementally throughout the release cycle, and when you hit version 2, there's not a whole lot to upgrade. You're not going from 0 to 60, you're going from 40 or 50 to 60. That was a bad analogy because you probably didn't realize I'm talking about like miles per hour or kilometers per hour or whatever, it doesn't matter. So that is kind of where I think that rolling releases have the biggest benefit. Going from one major version to another, I think is more seamless than when you're using a regular version. Now, who are these rolling release distributions for? A lot of people say that only those users with a lot of Linux experience should use rolling releases. I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. Because I have used rolling releases and I have never experienced a problem with a rolling release upgrade as it incrementally moves from version 1 to 2 or whatever. So I don't buy that you have to have a lot of Linux. There are, now I'm going to say this with an asterisk. I don't buy that you have to be an experienced user to make use of a rolling release distribution. That asterisk is because there are certain rolling release distributions that are probably not best suited for new users. Okay. And speaking of which, what are the best rolling releases out there? Now, again, opinion, mine, maybe not yours. So take it with a grain of salt. So there's OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. OpenSUSE has two different versions, Leap and Tumbleweed. Tumbleweed, as you would expect by the name, is the rolling release. And you would use that if you want to stay on the RPM side of things. Also, if you like the idea of having YAST, yet another setup tool, which is to the system like system settings is to the user-facing software, right? YAST is advanced, but you don't have to use YAST. You don't have to. You could just use system settings and be done with it. There's also Rhino Linux, which is one of my favorite rolling release candidates, and I'm going to confess it's one of my favorites because it looks really cool. It is based on Ubuntu, and it uses the XFC desktop environment, and their default layout is beautiful. So if you want a really cool looking desktop, you don't mind XFCE, which what's there to hate about XFCE, and you want to stick with Ubuntu based distributions, Rhino Linux is a great option. And then there's Arch Linux. Arch Linux is effectively a rolling release distribution. It is a good choice if you're an experienced Linux user and you want to challenge yourself to get to the next level, right? There's Manjaro Linux, right? Manjaro is based on Arch Linux, and it is also a rolling release. Why would you use Manjaro over Arch? Because Manjaro is easier to use. So if you like the idea of an Arch-based rolling release distribution, but you don't want to go through the hassle of installing Arch the way Arch gets installed, try Manjaro. It's a great distribution. Then there's Solus Linux. Solus is another rolling release distribution, of course it is, because it's on this list. And it uses the Budgie desktop. I love the Budgie desktop. I think Budgie desktop is so cool. And you can really kind of tweak the Budgie desktop into being whatever you like. I remember prior to me buying my latest System 76 Thelio desktop, I had the first iteration of the Thelio, and I ran Pop! OS on it for a long time, but I decided I wanted to switch, and I used Ubuntu Budgie. And I had that set up. It was awesome. It was gorgeous. I had the bottom panel as a dock, really cool themes, and it was a joy to use. So if you like that idea, then give Solus a try. And then there's Void Linux. Void Linux is a pretty challenging distribution. And so you really need to be an experienced user for this one. The cool thing about Void Linux and why I put it on there is that it's not based on any other distribution. It is in and of itself a thing, by itself, for itself, and of itself. So if you want a rolling release distribution that isn't based on anything else, and you have not a lot of experience, Void is great. So out of that list, I would say that Well, Rhino Linux is my favorite, probably followed by OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, Solus, Manjaro, Arch, and then Void. That's probably the way I would rate them. You probably rate them differently. You might even have another rolling release distribution you'd like to put on this list. You know, like Gentoo. Gentoo, I believe, is technically speaking a rolling release distribution. Is really hard. Just getting that baby installed is really hard. So I wouldn't recommend that one unless you really want to prove yourself, you know, king of the Linux community. Woo! Of course, we all know that's probably Linus Torvalds, but not probably. It is. So that's effectively what a rolling release distribution is. And I know that a lot of people will probably steer you away from them. But if you find one of the distributions that I listed off intriguing, I would suggest that you install one as a virtual machine on VirtualBox. Or if you have a spare computer lying around, install it and try it out. And see how it works. See how it goes from version to version. So you don't have an aversion to going from version to version via a rolling release distribution. Pretty cool, huh? So yeah, there you go. Rolling release distributions. You don't have to fear them anymore. You do not have to fear the rolling release distribution. Embrace the rolling release distribution. Love it. Hug it. I'm not telling you have to sleep with it, but you might want to give it a little love. Yeah. So I'm gonna try something a little. I'm gonna add a little something here. I'm gonna try to add this to all of my Linux 101 videos now. I'm gonna talk about the open source app or the Linux, whatever Linux app that I have been enjoying the most this past week. And I would have to say that that would be Zen Browser. Zen Browser is a fork of Firefox that has all of the security bits in place, minus the whole, I mean, there's a stink going on with Mozilla right now where they're with data, and a lot of people are going, don't do this, Mozilla, don't do this. So if you're a fan of Firefox and you're thinking, I don't know if I want to stick with this browser, check out Zen Browser. And I'll tell you for two reasons. Two reasons. The first reason is the theming. The theming of Zen Browser is, actually there's three reasons. I'm sorry, I got to add a third one. So 1, 2, 3. Un, deux, trois. The first one is the theming. The theming is awesome. You can theme Zen Browser the way you like it. And it's really cool because it's got gradients. So you can have one color on this side and one color on this side, and it's a nice, beautiful little gradient. It's really cool. The second reason is the mods. The mods, Zen mods, are little applications. They're like extensions. Think of them as extensions. And mostly they function to alter, tweak the UI. And some of them are really subtle, like drop shadow around the rendering pane, things like that. And there aren't, I mean, there's not like a staggering amount of mods, but there are enough that you can dig through them and find enough to cobble them together to create exactly the Zen browser you want. Now, the third reason is probably the most important reason, and it is the thing that I have been harping on Firefox, the Firefox developers, for a long time, and that is tab management. The tab management in Firefox is dreadful, but the tab management in Chrome is dreadful. Fortunately, Zen Browser went the way of Opera and Safari and other browsers that make use of workspaces. So you can create a workspace dedicated to one topic or one subject, add a bunch of tabs to that, and then you create another workspace, add a bunch of tabs to that, another workspace, add a bunch of tabs to that. Then you can pin some workspace, pin some tabs to workspace 1, pin some different tabs to workspace 2, and blah, blah, blah. It's great. It really is. If you are one to have a godzillion amount of tabs open to the point where the little fave icons are so small you can't decide which tab is which, you need workspaces. And you need Zen Browser. And Zen Browser is available for Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. I kind of choke up a little bit every time I say Windows, but not really. I'm just kidding. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. I hope that you have learned something, maybe been intrigued enough to try out a rolling release distribution or Zen Browser. Zen Browser. Get your Zen on. Thank you very much for spending a little bit of time with me today. It's been great. And I'll be back again next week for another Linux 101. And until then, I hope that you and everyone you know and love have a wonderful, wonderful day.